In this chapter, we will attach the lining to the dress. So you will refer to page 6, steps 4 and 5. For this step, you will need your 2 lining pieces, which you cut out at the very beginning, and your finished outer dress. Also, we will need 4 little squares of fusible interfacing. The pattern calls for a 1-inch square. You do not have to be exact here. It's just as long as the square is slightly smaller than the area where the button tabs is. This is just to reinforce the area so that the buttonholes don't come undone and the buttons, it kind of keeps everything nicely anchored. So, and it is important that you use the fusible interfacing, and you'll know that it's fusible because it has little pellets of glue on one side and the other side is smooth. And the side with the rough pellets of glue, that is the side that you will put down on your project and fuse. So what we will do is flip everything sort of wrong side out, just as I have it here, because you want to fuse this to the wrong side of your garment. And you'll position it sort of where you see it here, about a 1/2 inch away from all the edges. Again, it doesn't have to be super exact, just as long as it covers the area. And you already have your buttonholes marked in your project, so you can see where your buttonhole is and just position it just around that area to reinforce it. Make sure the glue pellets are facing down. And if the corners of your interfacing go a little bit into the seam allowance, it's not a big deal at all, because we're using lightweight interfacing, so it's not going to create a lot of bulk. So once you position them downwards like this, then you can take it over to your ironing board and fuse them. It only this type of interfacing fuses very easily, so you just have to hit it a little bit better now. You will do that on all four of the shoulder tabs. I have my steam turned on, but it's okay. It's not going to hurt it at all. And I'll switch this like this. So now all of our buttonholes and button areas are nicely interfaced, reinforced. So now it's time to put together the lining. So you have 2 partial lining pieces. This is what we call a partial lining because it's only going to go a little bit below the chest area. It's not going to go all the way down to the bottom of the dress. You will put your lining pieces right sides together. And again, my lining does not have a right or a wrong side, but if yours does, you want to put them so the printed sides are facing each other. And we're only going to stitch the side seams for now. So it's just a small row of stitching here and here, 1/2 inch away from the edge, just to match what we've done with all the other ones. I'm not even going to bother pinning it because it's such a small area. It'll just hold together just like this. Going to go over to the sewing machine. I've got my machine set at a regular stitch length. And just going to stitch 1/2 inch away from the edge. Back stitching at the beginning to reinforce, and at the end. Now, because this lining piece will be completely hidden within your dress, you don't need to finish the seams. They will be completely inside of the dress. So all you need to do is, you can turn it right side out and press the seam to one side. If you wish to serge it or zigzag it, that is perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt it at all. It's just an extra step that you can save at this point. So I'm pressing them to one side. Making sure my seam is nice and perfect right here. Okay. The next step is to finish that entire bottom edge of your partial lining. You will sew pretty much all around the perimeter of that bottom edge. You will serge it or zigzag it. I'm going to serge it real quick. I always like to overlap the ends of my serger tails about an inch or so, just to make sure they don't come apart, and then I can trim it nicely like that. If you prefer a more finished edge on here, or if for example your child has sensitivity issues with, they might find edges like this a little itchy or something, you can always do a narrow hem in here instead of serging or zigzagging. And to do that, you just fold in towards the wrong side a 1/4 inch, you press it, and then press another 1/4 inch, and then you can stitch close to that upper fold, and then you'll have a nice finished edge, and there's no exposed serger threads or zigzag threads or anything. And right now I'm just like I said before, I love pressing everything when I get done with it, just so it doesn't have any bulk, or in case the serger curled up some of the extra fabric. I like to press everything as I go. So now we have the lining pretty much finished. So what we're going to do right now is we will keep the dress, the outer dress, right side out, just like this. We will turn the lining wrong side out. So again, can't really tell on this one because it's the same on both sides, but I know it's the wrong side out because my side seams are exposed right now. So wrong side out. I will insert the dress inside the lining, just like this. Well, make sure your front is at the front of the dress and your back, and you'll know because the front is shorter than the back, and it's done this way because the back tabs overlap like this over the front, so they're slightly longer. So you gotta make sure your front and your backs are aligned, and again, insert the dress inside the lining. Sort of pull it like this. You will use a lot of pins in this step because you want all of those curves to be nicely aligned. The first 2 pins you will put in are the ones that align the side seams. So you will take the side seam from your dress and the side seam from your lining and make sure they are perfectly aligned, just like this. And you put a pin right there at that underarm seam. And move to the other side, and again make sure that side seam of your outer dress and the side seam of your lining are perfectly aligned. Once you get these 2 side seams to align like this, you'll see everything just falls into place. So now you can sort of straighten your dress out like this and begin pinning everything, all of the other rounded curved edges of the top. So you will pin all the way around the front tabs, the neckline, the underarm, the back tabs. Like I said, you will use a ton of pins, but trust me, it'll be worth it because you don't want these areas to come misaligned, because if they do, then once you start sewing it, everything just kind of gets a little crooked, and then you're gonna be wishing you had used more pins. But you'll see how all of your pieces will fall together just perfectly. Great, I think we have pinned enough all around all the edges. Maybe we can use a couple more, but you get the idea. The more pins you put all around these nice curved edges, the easier it'll be for you to sew around them without them getting misaligned. So you'll see right now what we're going to do next is start at one of the underarm seams. So either one, it doesn't matter, you can start here, but a half an inch away from the edge, we are going to sew all the way around the perimeter of the entire top portion of the dress. So you'll start at one, you'll pretty much start at one underarm seam and end at that same underarm seam. So you'll go all the way around the back or the front, whichever side you start with. Go around the other underarm seam, then around the whole front or back, and then finish exactly where you started. Overlapped a few stitches just for reinforcement. So let's take this to the sewing machine. You will need to sew slowly and carefully around all of those tight curves because it's so small. So we are going to sew half an inch away from the edge, starting at the underarm seam. So now that I've sewn all the way around the perimeter of my top portion of the dress, it's time to notch the curves. So on these convex curves, like this one, you know, the ones that curve outwards, I like to do a V shape, and I like to snip as close to the stitching, obviously without snipping through the stitching. And if you want to trim the seam allowance a little bit smaller on these areas, you can do that. On the smaller sizes of these dresses, it might be beneficial to do that so you don't create a whole lot of bulk in these tabs. So you can do little V shapes like this and then trim it down. Just like that. On the concave curves, the ones that look like a U, you don't need to do the V shapes, you can just snip, just like this. As close as you can to the stitching without clipping through. And then as it starts curving outwards again, then you start your little V shapes. This V shape is necessary because once you turn your garment right side out, all of these shapes will come in backwards of what you see right now. So all of these V shapes will actually close up like this once they're on the inside of the garment. So it's important to do, and if you don't do any clipping or snipping like this with the seam allowance, it'll be very hard for you to turn and keep that nice even curve, that very smooth curve, and it will create some unsightly bumps on the inside because of all that fabric that just kind of comes together, and it just does not look very clean and nice. So now it's time to turn your dress inside out, or actually right side out. It is inside out right now with the lining. This is where the hemostat comes in place, and I love using this tool it's my favorite turning tool for several reasons, but one is because, first of all, it does not pierce the fabric. It's got these little teeth right in here that will grab onto the fabric. It's got a nice blunt edge. It's not pointy, so it won't damage your fabric. So what we do is insert the tool all the way inside until you can feel with your fingers that it's at the very end of your shoulder tab. And then you can open it up like this. Open it up all the way, and then just sort of push it in with your thumb, push the fabric in there, and then you'll hear a clicking, meaning that it's locking in place. You hear that? And so once it's locked in place, and you can lock it, it's got 3 different stages of locking. I don't probably need to lock it all the way, but I'm gonna do one more. There you go. And then you can just gently pull the shoulder tab out. Oh, I can see it. I got it stuck even more here. There we go. And it pulls it out so nice and smooth. And you can do that on all of the shoulder tabs. Pull them all out. Oops, I grabbed too much of the fabric. You just want to grab that little tip right there. There we go. And then do the back ones real quick. Again, you don't need to grab a whole lot. This tool is so strong, it'll clamp on nicely and it'll pull everything out. Once you have everything out, then you can just smooth it out either with your fingers or with the tool itself. And I'll show you how you smooth it out with the tool. And then pull. All right, so now we have everything pretty much pulled all the way out. And then we can use the same tool because the point is not sharp, it's actually rounded. It is the perfect tool. You'll lock it in place, so it's nice and closed up. This is the tool you'll use for smoothing your curves, and I love doing this like that. And because the tip of this tool is stainless steel, it's not going to melt under the iron, so you can actually take this over to your ironing board and work that curve nice and smooth with the tip of your hemostat and hit it with a little bit of heat and steam to make sure all of your shoulder tabs are nice and smooth. And you can keep working at it. Right now, as you can see, it's not super smooth, but the more heat you put on it and maybe even a little bit of steam, you can even spritz it with a little bit of water from your iron just to get that curve. I'm a stickler about nice, beautiful curves when it comes to things like this. They have to be nice and smooth. But we're gonna go all the way around and smooth out all of these curves. I'm going to turn it right side out completely so you can see how it's shaping up together. How cute. You want to make sure your lining is all the way tucked inside of your dress. And you can use your fingers, you can use your iron, you can use a little steam, and even a little bit of water to get it super smooth all around those curves, because you don't want them. I'm going to take it to the ironing board right now and just smooth out this curve, because the last step in attaching the lining is top stitching it, and you want that top stitching to be smooth all the way around, no puckers or anywhere in the fabric. It'll make for a very professional finish all the way around the top portion of this dress. There we go. Oh, it's looking so great so far. It's gonna be so cute. I'm pressing this underarm area so it's nice and smooth. I've got my steam turned on in my iron so that I can tell it's gonna smooth it out really nicely. Smooths out some of those puckers too, if you have any. It happens to all of us. This is the front, so I wanna make sure, this is the most important area. I wanna make sure this curve right at the neck is very, very smooth. There we go. That looks perfect. And I think we're ready. Let me hit it with a little bit more steam right here. Yeah. I think we are ready to top stitch. So here we have it so far. It's looking almost finished. So what we're going to do is, again, start at one of your underarm seams. Oh, I have a little thread to snip. Start at one of your underarm seam, just so it'll be hidden when you have when you have that overlap. And stitching is exactly 1/8 away from 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, and you want to match the top stitching that you have everywhere else on the dress. So we've been doing 1/8 of an inch from the seam, and we've been setting our stitch length to 3.5 millimeters. So I will do that on my sewing machine, set it to 3.5 millimeters. This is for consistency's sake only, so everything looks the same. And you'll take it to the sewing machine. I have all my little pieces in here in the way. And we're just going to top stitch all the way around the perimeter, right where that seam is, so that you get a nice finished edge. There you have it. The whole top portion of your dress is fully top stitched. So now all we have left to do are buttonholes, buttons, and the hem.